Hello and welcome to the Insider In-Depth podcast. I'm Ian Griffin, Deputy Editor of Midlands Business Insider. And in this podcast, we're going to talk about the viability gap in property development. So, what is a viability gap when it comes to developing a site, a scheme? What causes it? What's the remedy? And who should be providing that remedy? And also, what leadership and technical skills are needed to ensure schemes move forward? Now, I have three fantastic guests on this podcast to answer those questions and more. And they are Deborah Casey, Head of Affordable Housing Growth at Homes England, Laura Colson, Development Director at Harworth Group, and Rachel Lister, Director at Thomas Lister. And also I wanted to thank Rachel and Thomas Lister for sponsoring this podcast. Can I start with you, Deborah, from a kind of public sector representative in the room? How does an organisation like yours, a government agency, tackle that problem?
So I think from the point of view of Homes England, the main purpose of Homes England is to deliver the government's housing and regeneration ambitions. And that means intervening where the market fails. Yeah. So as a public sector organisation, we're publicly funded. It's putting public funding in the right places so that we can tackle market failure where it's beneficial for the public good to do so.
Yes.
So the question always has to be, what are we trying to achieve here? Does this align with what Homes England's trying to deliver? Does this align with government objectives? And market failure can occur in many different ways. So whether that's the failure of the market to provide homes for what people need in terms of affordability, in terms of specialist housing or homes of the right type and tenure, then we have grant funding programmes to address that in the form of the Affordable Homes Programme. But it could also be that the market's failing to provide the right amount of private finance that's needed to get larger developments going. It could be that the market is failing to take on the risk that's required for some very large sites and urban extensions that's needed. So there is a role for Homes England to play there in all of those things.
Obviously, the public good would mean, regeneration, socio-economic benefits to an area, to a town, city, that those type of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's value, isn't it? So when we're looking at putting public money and we're custodians of the public purse, we have to ensure that what we're getting is the output that we need. So, I mean, that's really easy when it comes to affordable housing because you generally always get the benefit out of affordable housing. But in wider projects, there can be, the wider regeneration is equally as important, even when, we're hitting all elements of the housing market there. We need to deliver a large volume of homes, not just affordable homes. So, yeah, there's a wider remit to what Homes England does in that respect.
Of course. Well, thank you for that, Deborah. Laura, can I move on to you? Is a failing market always retrievable? And what examples have you got in your experience? Obviously, you do a vast amount at Harworth's. I'm sure you've obviously come across a lot of projects that are a lot more trickier to get underway than others.
Yeah, I mean, at Harworth we do take on the trickier sites, and I think it is retrievable. Yeah. But I think that there is lots of ways that we need to tackle that. Affordable being one. I think there's issues around infrastructure, and market failure won't help that. But at Harworth, the fact that we remediate and regenerate sites and create places where one of our mottos is to build places that people want to live and work. It's not just about homes for Harworth, it's about place making. Yeah. And that will enable a market, will create a market in itself, and will help to retrieve that. Yeah. But I think there is, it's not just one thing. Yeah. Not one thing can then retrieve it. I think it's several things.
It's interesting. You talked about infrastructure there, and we'll perhaps talk about that later as well. Obviously, it's key. Transport is key to getting projects viable as well. And you said it's not just one thing. I mean, it's quite interesting, Rachel. The question I wanted to ask you was, I mean, what else causes a viability gap other than the market failure? It's not just the private sector's fault. there's a lot of other external factors, isn't there?
Absolutely. And what we used to see with market failure, and it's such a broad definition, it covers a whole myriad of issues. It could be the infrastructure, it could be the affordable housing, it could be fragmented land ownership, it could be brownfield land conditions. There are a whole myriad of issues there. But you used to be able to pinpoint that issue and identify then what needed to be addressed. But if you actually fast forward now to today, we've been through the pandemic, Brexit, the war, the cost of living crisis, there's a squeeze on household incomes, there's a squeeze on business incomes, there's the recent tax changes. What we see now is that market failure is widespread and prevalent. So where you wouldn't have expected it to be in the past, it is now, because costs have gone up so exponentially, values simply haven't kept pace.
Yeah, and again, that is a great summary really of all the different factors that are having an impact. But isn't the solution, and we're hearing so much about this these days, and I'm writing such a lot about them, is partnerships, particularly public-private partnerships. But I know that's not the only partnership. It's a little bit more. There's more to partnerships than just the local authority and the builder or the developer. I mean, Laura, how easy is it to form a public-private partnership? Again, you've got experience of this, and again, the whole thing about JVs versus kind of less formal arrangements as well. Just talk us through that.
So your first question, how easy is it? It's not very easy.
No.
Yeah, so public and private partnerships, we need to show our experience, and we have got that at Harworth. I think it shouldn't just be a conversation about public and private partnerships. I think to try and change the way we do stuff do anything at the minute, we need to think about partnerships within our industry. So that could be public-private, that could be between landowner and developer, that could be between house builder, landowner, developer, that could be Homes England, developer, house builder. It's not about local authorities and everybody else. To get into a market where it is right for everybody, that everybody sits at that table, partnerships need to be made, and that's not just one-on-one partnerships, it's about a collaboration. And I think that is really what we need to think about when we think about partnerships, and it not just be public versus private.
Yeah, it's that bit of a them and us, which is a kind of an old-fashioned, almost traditional way of looking at it. And as I say, we've moved on so much more in the last few years about how developments come to fruition. And Homes England are obviously a great example of that, really. You're obviously a government agency, but you're very much kind of commercially focused, and you're looking at the commercial market and how you can help. Obviously, there's certain parameters that you have to follow. But obviously you're all about forming partnerships. So how does that model work? Is there several models that
Yeah, so there's not just one model, and you're right, the main aim of Homes England is to work in partnerships with organisations across the sector, and to bring in that private finance, so to use that public equity to be able to bring private finance to help deliver the aims of what we're trying to do. And so there's not particularly one model. So if you look towards the affordable homes, particularly when we talk about partnerships there, we're talking about the use of grant with either traditional RPs or for-profit RPs who are bringing in private finance, pension investments, etc. They can work quite well for that for-profit model, and there's the combination to deliver a strategic programme. And then Homes England does go into formal agreements like JVs, etc. you mentioned, with organisations who have shared aims, and I think that's really important when we come down to talking about partnerships. So we're open to people who have the right ambition, the right aims, and then that finance capability to put into it. And that tends to be the way forward, but not one model is the same. It's a very sort of, let's see what we can do. We want to be, like you said, looking out commercially minded. So we very often say, let's start a conversation, let's keep talking. You're right, it's not always easy, but when we do manage to make it work, it can be really transformational to some of these places.
And do you not think that that's the way forward? You know, quite often, well, we've never done it that way before, but it's not working, is it? We've got to find a different solution. We've got to find a way through the madness that we've currently got in the, you know, economic climate, and the only way you're going to do that is look at it a little bit different.
I mean, traditionally there's been this culture clash between the public and private sector in these kind of partnerships. That's, you know, stuff that I've been made aware of over the years doing these type of events, and that's one of the challenges. But obviously it's about flexibility, and it's about each side having, isn't it? Each side having the willingness to do it, and I'm sure you've seen that up close.
And you have to set those objectives out at the very beginning. They need to be clearly defined, clearly documented, and what everybody's roles and responsibilities will be throughout. There's no ambiguity, there's no vagueness in terms of what needs to be done, but the ability then to structure input and involvement and funding at different times of that project. So the affordable housing programme is great, where you have an RP that comes in that can invest at golden brick stage at various points of that scheme, rather than the developer having to wait until the end, till the housing is completed and then gets paid for it. So they've had to carry all of that cost until the end bit. If you can factor in some earlier funding, that helps with cash flow, and it also helps with viability.
I mean, it's really interesting, because I did an event a few months ago on this very subject, public-private partnerships. Someone described the perfect business partnership as a bit like a successful marriage. You obviously you both go into it with as little secrets as possible from each other, i.e., you know, as you've kind of pointed out, you don't want to suddenly find out there's a massive problem with a piece of land or something, or some covenant somewhere. It's really quite interesting analogy, really. And when you've got that land, of course, or when you've identified that site, it's about, well, first of all, it's about getting the site right, choosing the right site, and paying the right price for it. And also, I suppose, it's about doing all that at the right time. That's an incredibly difficult task, Laura, isn't it? And it's something that I know Harworth, you know, you've just some great examples of where you have got that right, but I'm sure there's been some massive challenges in that area as well.
Buying the right price at the right time, and understanding what you get in. You know, we do a lot of due diligence when it comes to land buy, and our acquisition teams work hard to make sure that every stone is unturned before we do buy any site. I think that we've got the right technical knowledge and ability in-house to make sure that those right decisions are being made. But you're right, getting the site at the right price is tough, you know, at the minute it feels that very much developers are taking a lot of the upfront costs for that. So the upfront cost to bring a site on is ever increasing, and that just gives you viability change.
What are the different factors in that? What are the things that raise that cost?
So it could be regulatory changes, cost of finance. It could be, we talk about risk. So trying to mitigate as much risk as possible. The cost to try and mitigate the risk is pretty high. And there could be the time that you put into it to get.
You mean, when you talk about risk, do you mean remediating the site?
So it could be risk in lots of ways.
Under the ground.
There is the horror show that could be under the ground. I mean, I would like to think at Harworth, you know, complicated's our USP, and you know, we enjoy the complicated, I would say. I don't think some of my project colleagues would love me saying that, but I do think it is something that Harworth's really good at. But you know, it's risk from what you see under the ground, but it's also risk on the economic climate around you. What's happening? How you know, how are you getting through that site? How are we selling those sites? How are we making places? What's happening around us? There's lots of risks, really. And
the other, I mean, we're going to come onto the planning system later, but that's another kind of, I suppose, risk as well. I mean, the other thing is is sites, perhaps, or owners of sites, having a bit of an unrealistic idea of what that is worth? That's something that is
Very,
in your head seriously.
very much so.
Yeah.
Landowner aspiration
Yes.
versus what market value is, and very often the landowners may not understand even what market value is. They just know what they want for the site or what they
And what's
they
that
think
based on, this kind of unrealistic price? Where are they getting that idea from? It's worth X amount when it's not worth.
It can very much be what's out there to some extent in the market, or somebody up the road sold their bit of land and made X millions and they want the same. Now, the information that's out there in the market, that might be a headline value, it might not be correct, it might have happened 2 years ago, and obviously the time factor brings about a lot of changes. But you may also have competitive bidding situations, and where land is not in huge supply and you have a lot of developers going for that site, then price is the key driver there, and it drives the price up. But very often when developers get into the detail then of what that site is, or if there's a change in market conditions or legislation, then you can see values or the market's becoming more tricky, more uncertain, and values reduce. And there is then a land value or an offer that's been made that is no longer viable. So developers then go back and try and chip the site, or the whole thing falls over. And the public sector, of course, cannot invest anything that is not market value.
No, of course. I mean, I can bring you in here at this point, Deborah. I mean, what is it that the public sector can do, a government agency like Homes England? I mean, it's obviously there's only certain parameters you can operate within, isn't there? And you can't, do things to the market that are, false and not truly representative of it.
This is it. It's difficult. Like I said earlier, when you've got the public purse, there are certain rules you have to follow to ensure value. And one of the things that we do see, so when we're assessing viability, we ask for a Red Book valuation, and I do frequently see our partners have paid above that.
Right.
So we don't allow them to put that in as, well, we had to pay lots for it, so now we need more money, of course, but we can see what they have actually paid compared to what that site was actually valued at, and it is quite frequently above. And they tell us that that's what they need to do to secure that piece of land for all the reasons you've just listed, particularly when it's fairly smallish sites and you may have a landowner who isn't a big landowner and they've only got small pieces of land and they've got this inflated situation on value, or they're trying to deliver a particular specialist or affordable product in an area that really needs it, and the land availability isn't huge. So there's also a big difference between when you're operating in certain geographies to a strategic housing need to perhaps looking for larger plots of land for large developments. What can we do?
Well, I mean, I was going to ask you the ultimate tool you have, of course, and I know it's an area which I know can get quite controversial, but the ultimate tool you have, and a lot of public sector organisations have them too, is the compulsory purchase order powers. I don't think something Homes England has certainly not used to my memory, and a lot of public sector organisations haven't used them either. But it's something that's there that can be used strategically, so to speak, if want of a better phrase.
Absolutely. So it's a power that's really important, but it's not a power that we would see the use of it as being a successful outcome.
Yes.
So the fact that we haven't had to use it is a positive. So it's definitely not the end goal. So the way we prefer to work is in collaboration, in partnership. And if you get to a CPO and you have to actually enforce that CPO, you've kind of come to the end of the line there. And they rarely get to that stage, even with local authorities, even on individual bases with homeowners in regeneration areas or businesses or on a larger scale, because the offer on the table is always better for that person than what they will end up with through the CPO.
Why is it seen as such a negative thing to do? Because surely if you bought the piece of land, it's really important for a strategic kind of vision that the area has. The landowner's got, because it has to be a market value, that there's an independent decision made about how much it's worth. then everyone's happy, aren't they? The landowner, and then they've gone, they're away from the situation, and then we can get on with what we want to get on with.
Just because we haven't enacted a CPO doesn't mean we haven't got the outcome that we've wanted
Okay.
from that process. So we would get the outcome that we wanted from the process, but wouldn't have had to have gone through the CPO process. So through negotiation,
Yeah. Okay.
through collaboration, we've achieved the aim
Yeah.
that the CPO would, and that's always preferable.
Yeah.
Because they're very expensive, they're very difficult,
Okay. Yeah.
and it prolongs it.
Yeah, no guarantee.
It is a long process.
Negotiation, collaboration,
Yeah.
A lot of upset, a lot of upheaval. Yes. Yes.
it's not the optimum result.
It's useful where you've got a site that is in multiple ownership, because trying to get a high number of landowners, and particularly if they are businesses and they're going to have to go through a business relocation exercise, then there is very often a lot of resistance to that, because it causes a really high risk for businesses in terms of having to upheave and then start over somewhere else. Retaining staff, it's periods of non-trading, it's loss of profits, it's all these things that come into it, and that really is where CPO is far better than just trying to force a single landowner as such to sell. But and CPO is the option of last resort, and absolutely should be.
Many people are unhappy with the current planning system. You know, the view is it's not fit for purpose, but there's been some tinkering and it's not quite got to the position where people were wanting it to get to. I mean, what impact are these, you know, this kind of red tape, these regulations having on development? I mean, what is the solution? I mean, some people say it's about resources in local authorities. Some people say you've just got to tear the whole thing up and start again. You know, those two extremes. Somewhere in the middle, obviously. But where do we need to be on that, Laura?
I think there's a transitional point. So I think what the government have brought out today on planning, I think, is a step in the right direction. Yeah. It's what everybody needs, and it's moving in the right direction. I think the problem at the minute is there's no transitional step in there. So this is what we're doing, and in between what we're doing, there's no stepping stone to the end goal. And I think that's really upsetting the development cycle at the minute. And I think that there needs to be some kind of transitional step to get us to the end goal. There's that much regulation change that the unease is just eroding investor confidence entirely. And for a development for us at Harworth, we're not, a couple of hundred homes, we're thousands of homes over lots of years. Yeah. We're a through cycle business. So we have to think about how all those ups and downs can be smoothed out. Yeah. And at the minute, it feels like there's just no transition. There is one way, we're going that way. And in between that way, we are slowing down, and we can't do that. And the markets can't keep that.
No. So that is a big. It is a big. I mean, the planning issue is huge. I mean, Rachel, what's your view? Again, you've seen lots of examples, I'm guessing, over the years.
Absolutely, and BNG is obviously a huge one, and we see that as a real blocker to some schemes, and that has to be addressed.
Let's explain BNG. Sorry to the.
So it's biodiversity net gain. So you have to replace what is lost on that site plus 10%. Yeah. So that's a cost factor.
And just to be clear, even in urban developments.
Yes,
well.
Absolutely.
Because obviously you just associate the ecology with green area.
In lots of cases, urban areas could be full more ecology.
Absolutely.
Greenfields.
Absolutely. But then if you have to deal with that. There's no way over that at all. So something else has to give.
Yes.
So what has to give? Are we looking at quality? Are we looking at sustainability? Are we looking at more green construction because that's not affordable? Or should we get rid of all of the Section 106 obligations? And that impacts upon place making. So there's no unless you can go and secure yourself a nice big grant to deal with a cost value deficit, if that grant's not available, and very often it's not, that has to be the last resort, you have to demonstrate that you have worked through all of the options to be able to get to a viable scheme. And so what we see is qualitative changes, and we see Section 106 obligations being reduced, because it's the only way to address that viability gap. There's no magic wand to any of it.
And we're seeing that obviously quite visibly. Section 106 is, again, I've done bits on that over the last few months, Deborah. I mean, I suppose from your point of view, and we had a discussion just before this session, we were saying obviously ideal. There's an ideal world, isn't it, where we all want to build the right thing, nice and sustainable, embracing green ethos. But obviously, there's also the financially viable situation.
There absolutely is the reality to it, which I'm not trying to take away from at all, because I see it every day in terms of looking at viability assessments and the pressure that everyone's under. But these policies have a purpose. So whether it's to do with the biodiversity net gain, or whether it's to do with the provision of affordable housing, there's a moral or social value behind them. They're not introduced to punish the house building sector, although it may feel like it. So
They enrich them, don't they?
there's that wider consideration, isn't there? So as I said, that's not to take away from the challenges that they pose, but I think it's very important, and particularly when it comes to introductions to do with safety, to do with fire safety, for example. Nobody's disputing the added costs. Nobody's disputing the disruption. But there is a purpose to that we all have to get on board with and move with, and try and find a way forward.
I personally don't think anybody's disputing any. I mean, I know that I'm personally not. There is a requirement for affordable housing, BNG, fire safety, Building Safety Act, Building Safety Levy. They're all there for a reason. Section 106, placemaking. But I think our jobs in today's climate is to find a way. And I think that's the most important thing. We need to find a way, and that's not going to be sitting on our islands delivering it on our own. It goes back to your point on partnerships and joint ventures and collaborations. That's the only way that as a industry that will navigate the ever increasing requirement that is a must. I think that is the only way.
Well, you talked about partnerships, and obviously partnerships work because of the people in those partnerships, and businesses work because of the people in the businesses, and the success depends on the calibre of those people. I mean, it'd be quite interesting, and as I think I talked about it right at the beginning. What are the leadership and technical skills that are needed to kind of tackle this or remedy this viability gap? I mean, leadership's one thing, I suppose, and technical skills is another, but I suppose they do blend in together as well. Again, I don't know, Laura, what your take is on that as a big kind of developer yourself.
Yeah, so Harworth are a FTSE 250 company, PLC, and we've got some great leaders within our business. Linda Shalor is our CEO, and she leads the way in real estate. We've got some other great exec leaders within our business. What we've also got within our business is great technical people. We're an informed client. So we don't rely on consultants. There's 150 of us, but I would say the 150 of us are informed and educated employees that make decisions based on our lived and worked experience. And I think that's really important. At Harworth, we really love, most of us, if you speak to us, we love where we work. And we have a real drive and passion to create place. And I think that's driven from the top, from our leaders, makes us really proud to where we work for. But that then creates a better place. It then creates a better place to work, and then find these solutions. It's about the environment, isn't it? it's about the environment you work in, that then the creativity within that environment that makes you find a way, that makes you think of things slightly differently.
What was it you said earlier when we were talking just before this podcast? The phrase you'd heard, which you've embraced, which is I like the problem more than the solution. What was it?
Oh, that was it. So it was love the problem, not the solution.
Okay.
I heard that yesterday at Deloitte's. I was there for their innovation hub, and I thought that was a great love the problem, not the solution, and that in itself will make you think of a better solution. So you've not got one solution if you love the problem. You've got a myriad of solutions because you understand and love the problem, so you see it from every different facet.
Yes. Okay, that's a really good philosophy, really. Rachel, again, you see a lot of different people, different types of people. I mean, it does take a certain person to do this job, or does it? It's obviously these days it's about having also that diversity of knowledge and skills and experiences, isn't it?
Absolutely. And having been around the block a few times, I suppose, with these things, and over time you see a lot of different projects and a lot of different solutions and a lot of different ways of working. And in the good old days, the go-to was always, there's a viability gap, we need some public funding, and that's how it was addressed. Now there's a lot less public funding, or there isn't any at this time for this area. So you have to go away and find another way. But very often these sites require a multi-skilled, multidisciplinary approach to it. So is there a different way of doing remediation? Instead of digging it all up and carting it all off, can you do some surcharging where you keep the materials on site, you move it around a bit, you use what you can, and you mitigate against that high upfront cost of just literally a dig and dump?
Okay.
You might look at a scheme and say, okay, the phasing of that scheme is really heavy on upfront costs. Can we change that phasing a bit? Can we bring forward this area of land first? And if we can sell this, we generate more revenue, and that helps to carry the scheme. Is that scheme right? If you've had a planning permission in place for 3 years, has the market moved? Do you need to introduce a different tenure? Do you introduce build to rent? How does that need to change to be more market facing? And again, what's the delivery structure? Is that right? Do you need to bring in more than one developer? Is it a master developer and some SMEs? Can you bring in a commercial operator to take something else? So all these things that go into a mixing pot that you can then do some financial modelling against and test. Test, and you see what the best outcome is and how you can mitigate that gap. Yeah.
It's having that optimum kind of approach, I suppose. And I suppose that's always going to change, I guess. It's like a moving feast, isn't it, really?
So one of our things at the minute is multiple exit strategies. Have we got plan A, B, C, D, E? What are those? How do they look like? What's the financials of those? How agile are we? How can we move from plan A to plan B to plan C? And it's that point that we talked about at the beginning, is that liquidity point. How liquid is that asset? How have we reduced as many risks as possible? And that's the way that we're going to get through 2026, is agility. And having plan A, B, C, D, E in the locker, ready to roll out at the right time.
Yes. And I'm guessing Homes England, as a government agency, you have to think, you're thinking the same way, because obviously you are working with the market, so therefore you're going to kind of follow those kind of same rules, aren't you?
I mean, things can move very quickly, things can change. So in terms of what type of people you need people who can just react to a change in situation, particularly, you've just mentioned some of the recent legislation and changes that have come in. Things happen very quickly. You can find yourself in a very different position in terms of what you're aiming for a couple of years later. I also think there's a benefit, going back to what we said about partnerships, in people who can do relationships well.
Yes.
That's not a skill that does come to everybody. You can have some very strong technical people who actually aren't able to cut across the relationships that they need to do to get the best out of them. So effective relationship management, being able to sit in a room with people from, you know, the public sector, the private sector, and get to a point where you've got those shared goals that we spoke about at the beginning, and then to take that through the changes and the bumps and the hurdles to something that's actually delivered. So that sort of tenacity to keep going when, you know, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. I'm sure it's the same across both sectors, is really what we need from leadership.
Yes, yeah, it's interesting. Can I talk about there's a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. We've touched on ESG a little bit, obviously we talked about sustainability, didn't we? And but that's obviously a big factor in all businesses. What's the view about ESG in the property sector? I suppose I'll start with you, Rachel, because you have a bit more of a kind of overview of this, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what ESG has done from our perspective in the development consultancy world when we're looking at projects is probably something that we're already doing anyway. Yeah. In that if you're looking at sites or buildings, it's taking that comprehensive approach to really getting under the skin of that asset, what the issues are, what needs to be dealt with, and what the opportunity is then in terms of not just delivering that project, but all of those additional benefits that can be generated from it too. So maybe the social value side of things has more emphasis now, but in terms of environmental considerations, they should always have been considered in any event. That's not new. It's just putting those front and centre really to say that this is what everybody should be doing, which to me is a bit of a common sense approach more than anything. But I think it's getting the profession on board to say that everybody should be doing this. And actually, if you're looking at a land value, don't just look at what sold next door 3 years ago. You need to think a bit more about what those environmental issues are, what needs to be dealt with, and how you best deal with those at the forefront of best practice and regulation.
Can I thank you for that, Rachel? Laura, can I talk to you about a slightly different subject, AI and tech? Because I know it's something that you were talking. You said you went to an event recently and you just went wow. I mean, there's been a lot spoken about AI over the last kind of few years, and there's concern that, you know, it's there's almost too much emphasis on it. What do you see as the benefits for your sector, and are you seeing those benefits already?
I think AI is in the industry already.
Yeah.
But really.
Small.
And it's in its infancy. I do think it's got a part to play though. Yeah. And you're right. I went to the event and I was, wow, this is interesting. Yeah. This is going to look good. I think that AI will have a huge part to play in the real estate industry. I do think that it's got to be done with caution and not head in. Not feet first and you know, oh my goodness, I didn't know it did that before. But I do think that it has got a part to play. And you know, another piece that I saw when I was there yesterday was that AI should enhance human strength. Yes. You know, it's not to do our job, it's to enhance what we already know. Yes. And make things a little quicker for us and maybe a little bit easier for us. But it's not to take away our jobs, and it's also not to take away our knowledge. That human interaction is required. But I think the tech that's coming through for our industry is really exciting. Yes. Really exciting. Master planning. I was on a master plan innovation hub yesterday that was talking about how we can master develop the sites both for commercial and residential, and then the effects of solar panels and shadow and you know, heat and there was a myriad of different things that they were looking at, and within seconds you could get 50 different master plans based on the parameters that you put in, which you think about that cost element, that upfront cost element. For us to get a master plan, even to look at the viability, you are spending thousands upon thousands of pounds just to look at a viability.
Deborah, can I come to you on both of those subjects? I don't know which one, ESG and technology. They're both kind of massive issues, and one's been around more than the other, I suppose, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I've heard you just said, I would agree. I would agree with the point you were making there, that when you look at it, ESG, it just looks like common sense. So we're more used to sort of the social sector looking at the social value, but actually, you're already doing that, aren't you, in the private house building sector, because you're already trying to create places that people want to live. So a lot of it is to me just seems like common sense, but it's a positive step in sort of uniforming up the offer and just making it really clear. Sometimes you need this spelt out to just make it really clear, this is what we're doing and this is what everyone's working towards.
Placemaking should be at the bedrock of everything we do. Place it, you're not going to sell a site without it being place. But not only that, placemaking is about making somewhere where somebody feels comfortable, safe, and I think that that is common sense.
Yeah.
And the risk is that that's lost through this build baby build if everything is being accelerated and being delivered at speed, and it's got to go through the planning system as quickly as possible, and the viability issues. So what is foregone to get that permission? So I think it's really interesting times in terms of what we see happening in terms of how some of these developments come forwards now.
I think on that note, it's a good time to draw this to an end. It's been an absolutely fascinating discussion. Thank you so much, guys. Obviously, Deborah, Laura and Rachel, that's been really, really insightful. Thank you very much for your time. And obviously, thank you very much for Thomas Lister for sponsoring this podcast. We'll see you all soon. Thank you, guys.
Join us next time for more great conversation. If you want to take part in one of our podcasts, please get in touch.